Hey guys, welcome to CS Talks. This is part 2 of system design series. In part 1, we have talked about what is system design, why system design, and expectations around that in interviews. Today we are going to talk about how to approach a system design interview question. I'll give you some general high level steps which can lead you to a good system design interview. Before moving to the approach, I would like you to keep in mind few things. First is system design interviews are very high level interviews and there is nothing like correct or wrong answer. Second thing is that the only thing matters is your approach, your breadth of the knowledge and depth of your expertise. Third thing is this is a two-way communication, not a one-way communication. Fourth thing is 80% of the interview you are going to drive as a candidate, not the interviewer. Fifth thing is stick to the requirement at any point in time and get frequent feedback from the interviewer. Let's move to the approach. Step number 1, listen to the question carefully and clarify your understanding about it. What do I mean by that? For example, you have given a question that design a system for the cab service. What should be the first question? That is it some kind of mobile app like Uber which provide on-demand service, or it is some kind of website which can not provide you on-demand service but you can book a shuttle or ride for the future purpose. Step number 2, ask the interviewer and list out all the features to build, which are also known as functional requirements. In our example of a cab service design, there can be multiple features like process a request from the rider. Then second thing is match a driver to the requested ride. These are the things or features we can add it as a system design in cab service. Step number 3, identify the use cases. These use cases are mostly from the system's perspective, how a user is going to interact with the system. In our example, use cases can be rider can request a ride and driver can accept or decline a ride. So rider and driver are the users of the application and their actions are the use cases for the system. Step number 4, clarify the system design constraints and define the scope of the problem, which is also known as non-functional requirement in the system. There are few things which you can clarify in system constraints. For example, total number of users, total number of active users, and also you can clarify that are these users are geographically distributed or from a single region. That is first thing. Second is you can clarify all the scalability requirements, availability of the system, that is this system is going to be available, highly available or not. There are few set of constraints or things which interviewer may want you to calculate based on the given constraints. For example, memory and data requirements. That is definitely you need to calculate based on the total number of users and total number of active users based on the distributed region. So these are the things which you may need to calculate after getting the basic constraints. These all constraints are very important to keep in mind while designing a system so that we can match the expectation of the interviewer. Step number 5, draw high-level block diagram of the system. As a part of this step, you will need to outline an important blocks that your architecture will need. For example, you may need gateways, nodes, API, services, network architecture, database, and so on. Connect those blocks as per your use cases and features requirement. And then justify your high-level architecture to the interviewer in brief. Before moving to the next step, get the feedback from the interviewer and address the concerns what interviewer have. Up till now, we have explored the breadth of the system. Now we are going to explore the depth of the system. So for that, step number 6, ask the interviewer that in this system, which block or which part of the system you want me to go dig deeper and design in depth. Here there are few possible options which your interviewer may want you to go in depth. In this step, keep in mind all the features and system constraints you got it in the beginning. If interviewer wants you to go in depth in API and system design, then you want to talk below things. First, you want to talk about the API endpoints in detail. Then you want to talk about software architectures like microservices architecture or publisher subscriber or client server. Then you want to talk about design patterns for the software. There are a lot of software design patterns. Whichever is suits more, you need to choose that software design pattern, and you can talk about the trade-offs also. And the last but not least, you need to talk about the data structure and algorithm you are going to follow for that particular goal for the feature. If your interviewer wants you to go in depth in database design, then first thing you want to review is the CAP theorem. What CAP theorem says is that there are three things you need to keep in mind. One is consistency, one is availability, and one is partition tolerance. So based on those requirements in the beginning you got, like whether you have high availability or not requirement, whether you need consistency across the data or not, and whether you need less partition tolerance or not. So based on that requirements, you need to define that whether you will need SQL database or no SQL database. Let's say by the trade-offs you come to a conclusion that you want to use the SQL database. Then you need to define the schema in detail. You need to define all kind of keys like primary key and then foreign keys and composite keys. Then you need to go ahead. If you are going to choose the NoSQL database, then you need to think about which kind of partition key you are going to use, which kind of sorting key you are going to use, how you are going to design your NoSQL database, which type of NoSQL you are going to use. Like you are going to use key value pair, or you are going to use the document like JSON NoSQL, which kind of NoSQL you are going to use. So those are the things you need to keep in mind while you are defining the database requirements. If you are going to working with lot of data, then definitely you need to think about the data partitioning strategies and data sharding strategies. So first of all, define whether you need those things or not. And second thing is, then if you are going to follow those strategies, then what is the best thing you can do? And always remember, talk the trade-offs. Don't just make a rash decisions. And in terms of SQL and NoSQL, if you are going to use some kind of technology or third-party database, then don't just give the name. If you know the trade-off, then give the name, or you can tell that we can use this thing as it is very popular, but I don't know much in detail. Just state that to the interviewer. There are a few more things your interviewer may want you to go in depth. The first thing is caching. Are you going to use the cache or not? If you are going to use the cache, then which kind of strategy you are going to use, and where in your system you are going to use the caching. The second thing is the load balancing. Are you going to use the load balancers or not? Where you are going to use it, and which kind of strategy or scheduling algorithm you are going to use in your load balancers. The third thing is the queuing. Let's say you have to use some kind of messaging queue system in your system, then which kind of queue you are going to use? Are you going to use any third-party queuing system? And if you are going to tell, then you need to give the trade-offs that okay, why you are going to use the third party and why you are not going to build your own queuing system. The last thing they can ask is about the networking protocols. So they may ask you that which kind of networking protocols are you going to use in communication in your system design. So there are a lot of things which your interviewer may want to go in depth, and at that time your knowledge breadth should be too much that at least you can give some basic information to the interviewer. And don't just say if you know, then and only then give the answer. Otherwise, tell honestly that you don't know that part, and that is totally understandable, as you can't be the expert of everything in that system. I know this step is complex and bit tricky, but there are few things which can help you to go through this step easily. First thing is the knowledge of most of the things in computer science area. So if you have studied computer science, there are a lot of things which can help you through this step. Second thing is that all the latest cloud offerings from different companies like AWS, Azure, and so on. So if you have knowledge of those services, cloud services, which you can leverage while making this system design. Third thing is all the third-party offerings or third-party company offerings which you can leverage in your while making a system design. So those informations are important. The next thing is that you should know how to compare or trade off between the products as per your requirement so that you will choose a correct product for your system. The last thing you want to keep in mind is that you can do self-analysis for buy versus build. So either you can build something by yourself or you can buy a third-party tool. So you need to understand and analyze that whether you want to buy or you want to build by yourself. So those are the points will help you to go through these steps in this step 6, and you can design or go in depth very accurately or very efficiently. Cool. So we are done with all the steps. To summarize all the steps, first thing, listen the question carefully and clarify the understanding. Second thing, list out the features, which is known as functional requirements. Third thing, define the use cases and write it. Fourth thing is list out all the system constraints, which is also known as non-functional requirements. Then fifth is that define the high-level architecture using building blocks. And the last but not least, go in depth with whatever the interviewer wants you to go in depth. I know these interviews are tough and complex in nature, but keep practicing, guys, and you will get success. For watching the video, like and share my video and subscribe my channel CS Talks. Thank you.